I am Joanne Schinstock, the director and principal of Scholé Academy. Charissa Sethman, you will also hear from her tonight. She is the tutoring center manager, and I'll introduce her more formally in just a minute with her background. And then we also have some tutors and teachers who are also tutors with us as well tonight. So you'll see as you're looking across your screen at your panelists, we have Vincent Capone, Joelle Reithmiller, and then we have Danae Edsall. So from a variety of backgrounds, Latin, math, humanities. So we're just really grateful. They're going to share their experience with you. And then we really want tonight to also just be conversational Q&A and give our tutors and our tutoring center manager a chance to speak directly with you. So that Q&A box is going to be really important for listing your questions. But of course, after tonight, if you have follow-up things that you want to connect with us on, that support@scholeacademy.com is a general email, and that will get right to Charissa in the tutoring center, or even myself with regards to the school. So let's go ahead and begin. I wanted to briefly talk about the history of our school, Scholé Academy. Some of you might be brand new, meaning that you're not necessarily using our services or attending online classes at the moment. So if you're brand new and this is your first event at Scholé Academy, welcome. Scholé Academy started in 2014. We began with just about 8 students offering 2 classes, Latin and Logic. And so that was 2014. We are within the publishing company, Classical Academic Press. The publishing company started in the early 2000s with Dr. Perrin. And fast forward to when we opened the school, we quickly joined the revival of classical Christian education in terms of working with homeschooling families who wanted to provide their families with classical education. We believe classical education is for all students who would like to have that learning. And so we quickly found an audience, and in 2014, we grew, as I said, from those 8 students to where we are today, which is well over 1,700 students. I actually believe we're closer to that 1,800 mark. And we have about 90 teachers and tutors, including our special needs instructors. And this is a part of our Center for Students with Learning Differences that we're going to touch on tonight. We offer courses, private instruction, and supplemental tutoring across all disciplines: math, science, humanities, Latin, logic, writing, so Spanish. So there's so much there that we offer, and in just a little bit, Charissa Sethman is going to speak to that in more depth. But in terms of our mission and vision, we have what we call the Great Hall and our houses of studies. And so we have 3 different houses of studies, one in the Catholic tradition, one in the Orthodox tradition, and one in the Anglican tradition. And we realize that this is unique in terms of our ecumenical mission. And then within the Great Hall, this is where we offer math, science, writing, music, art, and many of the more core subjects, if you will. Those classes are where all of our students come together from a variety of Christian traditions. And then if families would like to have their students study more specifically in their Christian tradition, they have those 3 houses: the Aquinas, which is our Catholic house, St. Raphael School, the Orthodox house, and then Canterbury House, which is our Anglican house of studies. So in January, we will have an open house specific to our corporate classes. Tonight, we're focusing on the tutoring center. So I'd like to introduce Charissa Sethman. She has been with us since 2018. She's been an instructor, and now she has been working as our tutoring center manager. She is just a delight at working with our parents and our tutors to help meet the needs, specifically whether it's through private course instruction or supplemental. And she'll go ahead and explain some of that in just a minute. But As I said, her expertise is not just in the area of grammar and writing, but she just understands the needs of the learner really from grade the beginning grades up through 12th grade. So I'm so delighted to have her as a part of the Scholé Academy team. And I'm going to hand it off to you, Charissa. And then, of course, you can introduce our panelists as well. And then just a reminder, if you're joining us, please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A. We are going to go to that Q&A after presentations.
Thank you, Joanne. Good evening to all of our guests. I'll take a moment right now and introduce you to the tutors who have joined us as panelists tonight. We have Mr. Vincent Capone, and he's going to talk about humanities, though he teaches and offers instruction and tutoring in more than that, but we'll hear from him tonight. Vincent, tell us where you hail from. Is it New England?
The Mid-Atlantic. I'm in New Jersey, central New Jersey.
Yes, thank you. So it's good to have him with us this year. He really has a great interdisciplinary mind. And so that obviously leads to great discussions with students. And we're really grateful to have him. Joelle Reith-Miller is here tonight. She'll be sharing with us about math. And also just about relationships with parents is something we care a lot about. So Joelle, welcome. Danae Edsall will be giving us a glimpse into the Latin department. So that's one of the things that we are proud to be known for at Scholé Academy. And Danae is tried and true tutor there. She can talk about that and also about a number of other interesting dynamics we have going within the tutoring center. She's one of our veterans. And Mr. Paul Klauke from Chicago area. So Mr. Paul is with us, and he is also a math instructor. And Paul can also tell us a little bit about just working with the student who is nearing graduation. So he is privileged to talk to a lot of our juniors and seniors, and so has some good thoughts maybe just in thinking about how can tutoring help the student who is nearing the end of his career as an undergraduate. So thank you, panelists, for being here tonight. I will go ahead and share with you a glimpse of how we make ourselves known to you. At our tutoring center page, you're able to find this through our academics menu at the ScholéAcademy.com website. Our tutoring center shares plenty of information here. We want parents to know exactly who we are, what we do. We want you to see in what ways we are also interested in offering a restful Christian classical education to your students, even if it's one at a time, instead of in the corporate course. And especially if there is a way that we can tailor our offerings to you in terms of need, in terms of scheduling, or in terms of learning difference support. Families can make a quick choice here from this page. We'll talk about both of these options, but supplemental tutoring is meant to be a service to come alongside a student who is receiving instruction elsewhere, maybe at Scholé Academy, maybe from another school or from mom at home. We can offer some support, help with understanding, some reteaching assistance as needed. Private course instruction is an offer that we have to mimic the experience that you might receive in a corporate course, but perhaps the schedule doesn't work. Perhaps your chosen section filled up. Perhaps there's some other need, or you desire a subject that sits outside of our current course offering. This is a way that you can receive that experience through Scholé Academy. Let's look at that now. At the top of this page, you'll see that we offer a large number of departments. We have instructors who have the expected experience that you would want to find at Scholé Academy, and also some interesting abilities that they can offer to you with a mind for restful Christian classical education. We've even included some new ones this year. So I want to draw your attention to some new choices that can be offered in both the supplemental tutoring or private course instruction ways. If you happen to be interested in pursuing one of these options for your student, we encourage you to study the particulars of private course instruction or supplemental tutoring. Do familiarize yourself with the pricing and some of our policies here, and to move into the request process. If you are able to turn in a pretty good snapshot of your student, I can match you with someone who I think will be a great fit for your family and its particular needs. You can include some basic details about your family, and then maybe some lengthy details about your goals, your hopes, where your student has been and where you hope to go. Families are invited to join us at any time in the year. We could prepare a plan for you to start that first week in September, as our courses do, or you could come into the tutoring center mid-semester. You could come in for a bit of help with exams, or maybe you've hit a difficult new concept in a class, and that's fine too. We offer our services to families by quarter, so 8 weeks in the academic year or during the summer. Families can create a plan for that time. If the plan fits, we can roll into the next quarter. If the plan needs some adjustment, we're there to help tweak the plan to grow what we've offered, to add a new resource, etc. So we hope that families will find that we have a very thorough but flexible model that serves them well. Within the tutoring center, we have a number of excellent tutors who, some of whom teach courses with us, and you might recognize their names, some of whom offer tutoring only. You can find an introduction to them here to put a face with the name, to learn about the offers, the departments in which they can offer tutoring, and then to even find the link to reach a tutor's bio if you'd like to know more. You could even ask for a meeting with the tutor. That meeting is dependent on the tutor's availability, but you could certainly ask. If you have a good relationship with your course instructor and you find their name here, you could also ask for a meeting with that person. We do our best to accommodate all of those requests, but again, those are that first meeting is based on their availability and their ability to take new students at any given time. We also offer instruction and support for students who are experiencing some level of learning difference. You can find out more about that here at our tutoring center landing page. You can find out a great deal more if you follow the button to learn more here. We have a letter of introduction from Dr. Amy Richards and a new parent commitments letter that helps you as the parent know exactly who we are, our philosophy, our commitments, the way that we see a restful Christian classical education as possible for a student facing specific learning differences, and also the way in which that we work with parents. We want to make sure that we've communicated well with you, that you know what you can expect, that we know that you are with us, that you are in the driver's seat, that you are managing your students' needs, communicating with your students, other instructors, etc. We want to keep parents in the driver's seat. We absolutely do not want to sideline any parents or imply that we could do it without you. We are simply here to support families. We want to keep you in the loop. We do have a lengthy description here of what a learning difference is, the definitions, a bit of information about the markers of some specific learning differences. If you are not sure yet what your student might be facing, if you have not had any specific diagnoses yet, this might be a place to start to get more information. We do acknowledge that there are some limits to what we are able to do and ways we can help given our online format, but we're willing to talk with you. We're willing to explore some ideas creatively about how we might be able to support your learning goals in your family. We also include information here about our process and our prices, just like the other page we saw momentarily within the tutoring center. And we hope that this will let you know fully what you're getting into, what you can hope for with us. And at the end of this, that you would be prepared to submit a request for a consultation. You are able to request a meeting with a certain tutor who works with us in the Learning Difference Center, and we will ask that tutor if she's available. Again, that is dependent on her availability, but we do our best to accommodate your request. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to hear from some of our panelists who can describe a bit about what these courses look like in various departments. I'd like to start with Danae Edsall, if you're willing. Danae, could you tell us a little bit about what Latin looks like in both supplemental tutoring or private course instruction?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, just hello again. I'm so glad all of you who are here and those who are going to watch the recording are able to attend tonight. And I'm really honored to have the chance to talk a little bit about Latin. So I've been teaching Latin for about 10 years now, and I've actually worked with about as many Latin curricula. So when I think about the Tutoring Center's offerings in the Department of Language and specifically with Latin, I first want to start just by echoing what Charissa and Joanne had said, that a lot of the tutors with the center are able to offer quite a bit of knowledge and experience with the programs that you and your students may be using. Because first and foremost, when I think about the experiences I've had tutoring in Latin and first steps with families when I do start working with a new student, is the priority of establishing goals and needs of the student and of the family. So I myself as a tutor, when I first meet a family and a student, I love to hear and to learn as much background knowledge as I can about that student. So if you're filling out that form or if you're in an initial meeting with a tutor, it is always helpful to overshare about that student's background, books they've used in the past, programs that they've worked with, because there's a chance that your tutor might know it and might be able to jump in right alongside you. So maybe I'll start first with supplemental course tutoring. So again, supplemental course tutoring applies to any tutoring situation where we as the tutors are coming alongside a direct instructor and your student to aid your student in any way that they might need it. So typically that looks like establishing connection with the primary teacher while maintaining connection with the family. So I like to know, what do they need for their student? What does their student need? Is it homework help? Is it review on their own time? Is it a little bit of both? Is it maybe just encouragement with the subject matter? Is it all of the above? And then from there, we can adapt our tutoring services to look however they need to. So most of my supplemental tutoring in the past has looked like a combination of two of those pieces. Usually our time is spent between, or it's divided between, covering homework and assignments from their current Latin course, and then also spending some time on some review material that I have created for our meeting time. And that might be a vocabulary review activity, that might be a fill in the blank with a grammar concept, it might be a translation activity or a composition drill. So we can really make that time look however we need it to. I've also done some supplemental tutoring with students who just need extra practice reading. And so I've been able to recommend resources for us to use during our meeting times, whether that's novellas, so short stories in Latin for us to read and work through, or original compositions that I'm able to write and produce for the family so that their student has a little bit of extra scaffolded time reading outside of class. So for me at least, and I would think for most of our tutors, when it comes to supplemental tutoring, our goal is to be there to serve your student in that class. And so their goals and their needs always come first. And then maybe just to circle back to the earlier point I had made, being able to work with different curricula, something we can offer as well. So I have offered supplemental tutoring with like non-Scholé courses. So I teach with Scholé with the Latin Live program, but I've done some private tutoring and some supplemental course tutoring in different curricula because I've worked with them in the past. So we like to be challenged, I think, as teachers. I know as Latin teachers, we like to work with the material however it's being presented. So don't be shy about offering that information about your student and their needs. And then when it comes to private course instruction, very similarly, right, you start with establishing what are the goals, what are the needs of the meeting time. And then as the instructor in a private course tutoring situation, I typically take time to craft kind of like a syllabus for the family and for the students, which would list, so like any syllabus, course objectives, a meeting schedule, pacing, assignments, if that's a desired object or item for the course. I would send that off to the family. And then I would conduct that course very much like a regular large group classroom with meetings, with homework, with practice together, with independent practice for them to take home and work on. I've even done one private course scenario where I had assessments as well that I was giving and then grading and providing feedback for. So they're extremely customizable, but always with the goal of the growth and the help of the student in mind.
Thank you so much, Danae. I'm really glad that you shared the point about curricula we are able to consider a family's requests with various curricula in other departments as well. So it's always worth asking. Occasionally we have one person who does have that experience that we could put you in touch with. So thank you so much, Janae. Joelle, would you be willing to tell us about math, the math department?
Sure. I'm Joelle Wraith-Miller again, and welcome everybody this evening. Well, it's evening where I am. So in math, with math tutoring in general, I tell my students in my Scholé classes that we have this recitation we do, and we say math is for everybody, math helps everybody flourish, and it's quoting Francis Sue. And so that's really my philosophy for helping students in math in particular. We talk about how, so not only the topic or the concepts, but their perspective on math and solving problems. So very often, if they're seeking extra support for tutoring for math, there could be issues with math anxiety or confidence, lack of confidence. So I try to address that in our sessions as well. So a combination of providing some games to relieve some of that math anxiety, and then attaching or in addition to concept and skill work, and then also addressing the skills at where the student is, like if they would come in at a certain point in a particular skill, realizing that, or going backwards a little bit and starting at that level where they have understanding and a confidence at that point, and then taking it up to the level that they're working at currently. So I like to also supplemental tutoring also provides some extra time maybe that might not be available in a classroom to hit that that why or that process, or maybe a student needs more direction as far as, you know, in a corporate class setting. And so supplemental tutoring is able to provide that little bit of extra conversation time, maybe discussion time, more of a I guess I could say, so like Socratic learning, where you're asking the question and going there. So the one-on-one supplemental tutoring is good for that as well.
Thank you, Joelle. And could you tell us a little bit about some of the grades with whom you work?
Specifically, well, with Scholé, I teach 6th and 7th grade, but I do have a 4th grade tutoring student. And so currently my supplemental students are part of my Scholé classes. And so I'm instructing doing additional instruction outside of my particular class. But currently right now I have like lower to middle school age students.
Yeah. Thank you. So Danae and Joelle and Vincent and some other tutors within the tutoring center do teach corporate classes in various departments. And occasionally the course instructor has the bandwidth time to offer additional tutoring in that subject area if it's needed for the student. So that's a conversation that your instructor might initiate, or you as the parent could initiate with the instructor. Are you available to help a little bit with some of the needs that have been revealed over this semester? Mr. Paul, could I pass it to you? Could you tell us a little bit more about math, but in particular, maybe the older grades, the 8th grade and up?
You're muted.
Okay.
Here we go. Thank
Got
you.
it. I think you hear me. Yes. What I was saying was I appreciate what Joelle said about the why because I mean, in every subject, but especially math, I think to understand why this thing works is so much more important than memorizing. I mean, there's a certain amount of memorization that needs to be done, the multiplication tables and stuff like that. But once you get past that, it's how does this work? Because word problems, they come in all different shapes, and you have to be able to actually know exactly what they're asking and how to get to that. So the understanding is crucial. And the more they understand, the more confidence they will have, as was mentioned before, but also the more fun they'll have. And so I really love tutoring. And I thought to myself, well, when you're teaching a class of, say, 30 students, and even if you've got 2-hour-long classes a week, you're spending maybe 2 minutes each class for each student. So a total of 4 minutes for the week for each student. When you're a tutor, it's the whole 2 hours. So I'm spending 120 minutes with one person and directing everything at their level. In a classroom, you've got some weaker students and some students are very good. So you want to challenge those, but you don't want to leave the weaker students behind. So you kind of teach in the middle. But when you're one-on-one, it's great because you can spend the whole hour with that one individual working on, exactly what they need. So that's why I love tutoring. And yeah, I'm more in the high school area. I do the high school students. I like to do those guys, and even when they're nearing graduation. And I had one student who was just he skipped a grade, so I kind of helped him get caught up for calculus. So I taught him pre-calculus, and then he's taken AP calculus, and I had to defer to a real calculus teacher because I haven't looked at that stuff in a long time. So I'm not a teacher by trade. I'm an actuary. But so anyway, and Charissa's been very helpful in getting him taken care of. So it's great. So it's a great program. Thank you, parents, for being here. I recognize one of the parents. Hi, Kelly, of one of my students. And yeah, it's great fun, and it really will help understanding in any area that your daughter or son are struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank God for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And I've enjoyed getting to know Paul. He's been involved in the renewal of Christian classical education across the globe. So if you get a chance to talk to Mr. Paul, he's got some good stories about the growth there across several continents. So thank you, Paul. Amanda Reeves is able to join us now. Amanda is also both an instructor and a tutor in the Latin department. We've heard a little bit about Latin. So Amanda, I'd love to hear more, and I'd love to hear, if you're willing, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot with a new question. Would you tell us a little bit about perhaps tutoring in the summer? What does that look like? What benefits does that offer to a family?
Yeah, I would be delighted. Thanks for having me here. Sorry, I could only pop in for a little bit. I'm at an orchestra rehearsal otherwise, but I'm glad that I got to spend a little bit of time with you and share a little bit about my experience as a tutor. So like Charissa said, I both teach and tutor through the Latin department. I primarily work with lower and middle school students, leaning a little bit into the upper school, but I defer most of those students to capable hands like Danae's by the time they get to those more advanced levels. But I would love to talk a little bit about tutoring over the summer. It's a great joy to get to work with students over the summer. I have a lot of students in the academic year classes who just develop a love of Latin, and they're really disappointed when they discover then that there's 3 months without Latin that they have to endure, and they're not sure what to do with themselves. So every year I work with parents to design a study program over the summer for students. I've worked with individual students on enrichment exercises. There's some students who did excellent work in their Latin for Children A, B, or C course, or Latin Alive 1 or 2, but just really wants to continue to develop their love of Latin over the summer. So I'll work with them to work through things like Latin novellas, which are short Latin stories designed for early readers, or we'll work through spoken Latin activities, or if they're really particularly interested in mythology or history, we'll see to it that we develop a curriculum that can allow them to pursue those interests in the summer months. There will also be students who maybe had a difficult time with some of the concepts that we covered during the academic year classes who want to get a little bit of remedial work over the summer to make sure that they're well equipped and prepared for the coming school year. And that's always a lot of fun to work with those students to develop a study program that's not just going to help them shorten kind of those content gaps, but actually give them confidence and joy in their studies. So we do plenty of that as well. I've gotten to work with individual students over the summer, which is a lot of fun. You know, I heard a little bit of what Paul was saying about getting to really spend that special time with students one-on-one, engaging with their interests, and just how special that is. I've also had the great joy of working with smaller groups of students over the summer. So every now and then there will be a group of students who met each other in class that not just want to continue their studies of Latin over their summer, but they want to continue investing in those friendships. So we'll put together groups of 2 or 3 students who know each other from class or who have similar interests to make kind of a smaller group setting that is both more cost effective as well as maybe a little bit more fun for the students. So we do a lot of different programming over the summer. I know a lot of the regular academic year instructors, myself included, have a lot more availability over the summer. So that's a great time to get plugged into the tutoring center, get paired up with an instructor that maybe you just work with them over the summer, but you might even continue that partnership into the academic year.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that you highlighted the possibility of semi-private tutoring. So we do offer groups of 2 or 3 students to study with a tutor instead of just one. And we could help you understand maybe some ways that could work. Obviously, scheduling and then the level of each student is a consideration, but our tutors have been really excellent listeners and been able to come up with a great plan that's agreeable for all of those. And as Amanda mentioned, that's one way that we see some students who have met one another in this online classroom who have developed a really good relationship to continue that relationship, even past the end of classes in May. So thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate you being here tonight. And I'll ask Mr. Vincent, if you wouldn't mind, to tell us a bit about humanities tutoring and any other departments that you'd like to mention, Vincent, as well.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. This is Vincent Capone here. As Chris mentioned, I'm from Hamilton, New Jersey, in the Middle East, Mid-Atlantic region in the Eastern Coast. So this is my first year with Scholé. So I'm teaching a corporate course, actually in pre-algebra this year, getting my feet wet with Scholé, but my focus, as mentioned, is in the humanities, history major through Thomas Edison State University. And if you go on my bio on Scholé Academy, you'll see I kind of like to describe myself as, I feel like that one-room schoolhouse teacher from the prairie days of the 19th century, where you taught all the subjects. I've been with a small private Christian school in the Mid-Atlantic region for the past 9 years, and have really had that experience teaching a broad variety of subjects, but the humanities has really been one of my greatest passions. And as some of the instructors have mentioned already, what the private course instruction looks like, the emphasis really is on that personalized instruction for a full course of study, that it provides both primary and personalized instruction, that we tweak it and get to talk with the families and see what are the needs there, not only based on age or grade levels, which I focus primarily middle upper school into high school age, and providing the full scope and sequence of what a course could look like, complete with homework assignments, graded student submissions, assessments, etc. But that can all be tweaked, as mentioned. And the biggest thing for how this looks in the humanities, Danae mentioned earlier about all the different curriculums you can have, especially with Latin. Well, when you think about the humanities, with literature and with history, it's just as broad. And particularly because one of my biggest longings and desires and passions as not only a tutor, but also as a teacher, has been an emphasis on primary resources, I've taught history at Scholé Academy, the school that I worked at in person for the past 9 years. And 5 of those years I've taught history. Every time the curriculum has been founded exclusively around primary sources. I've never used a history textbook in any of my history classes. I feel there is a place for them, absolutely, but particularly as secondary sources in history realm, but focusing on those primary sources, because at its heart, history and literature is really about story and the lessons we can learn from those stories. Whether you're looking exclusively at a historical event or historical figure, or even a fictional character or a story arc, what are the things we learn from those situations to develop that critical thinking? When things happened in a story or in the course of a history text. I always joke with my students is, so many say that, well, history is boring because all I get to do is memorize dates and learn about people who died hundreds of years ago. Well, there's a role and a purpose for that. If it's only seen in a vacuum, that just memorize a date and have no context, then yes, that's understandable. But dates are a tool as part of a broader picture of events. When those things happen matters only in relation to the events around them. So I can use one small example going through American history, talking about some key dates in the American Revolution, and talking to my students about, when did this happen? Okay, and when did this happen? This happened a year and a half later. And what does that mean when you think of the ramifications of relating the series of events and how they relate to one another? That's an important aspect of it. And to be able to develop that critical thinking is a great opportunity when history and literature are geared towards thinking about those events, about those stories, about those figures on a broader level.
Thank you so much, Vincent. Could you tell us a little bit, Vincent, about kind of just how you see the parent relationship within the tutoring center? Could you tell us a little bit about your experience as a tutor as well, developing those?
Sure, absolutely. For both teaching and tutoring, that has really been another real desire of mine, to see the parent involvement be a real key part. This is not just tutor/teacher and student working together, and then the parent is just disconnected from everything. I try to keep my parents very involved in what's going on and seeing what we're learning about, what we're talking about, whether it's sharing homework assignments, not only to the students, but also to the parents, so they can see and be part of the conversation. Essentially keep a pulse on the workload as well, because another one of the key emphases of Scholé Academy is that restful learning, a balance of joyful rigor, but also not just inundating students with work. It's finding that balance, and the parents are going to be the ones who have that best view and perspective and understanding. So for me, that's a key thing, to keep that conversation ongoing, so the parents know and don't feel that, well, I'm just turning my student over to this tutor and we're locked into one set schedule. That is another aspect of the personalization, and why it's so helpful and beneficial that the tutoring and the private course instruction is broken down, how we see this by quarters, so you can take those 8-week segments and kind of take a step back if you need and say, okay, where are we after 8 weeks? Do we find that it was a little too heavy or intense for the student? Can we challenge them a little more? Can we add a little bit more? Adjust those hours, adjust that workload as well.
Thank you so much, Vincent. So in addition to the departments that we've discussed so far, we also offer tutoring in writing and rhetoric and grammar. We have instructors available to offer instruction in any level of either writing and rhetoric or well-ordered language, or additional writing or grammar needs that you might be able to describe for us. We could even consider other curricula as needed if your student needs some supplemental tutoring in a course that they're enrolled in elsewhere. We offer instruction and tutoring in both the classical languages and the modern languages. So you've heard about Latin, but we do also offer Greek and Russian. We have some tutors who could even assist with Hebrew. In the modern languages departments, we have Spanish German, and French, and that list grows each year. So I'm excited to see where that goes in future years as well. Logic and rhetoric, of course, we have many popular sections within Scholé Academy. Sometimes those fill, and we're available to offer another course to your student if you find that there's not room in your chosen section in that timing. We can consider other curricula. We could offer support in other logic programs and possibly even rhetoric studies, rhetoric 1 or rhetoric thesis. We've been able to offer within the tutoring center as well. The Center for Students with Learning Differences exists within the tutoring center, and we sit next to the tutoring center as well as to course instructors. Course instructors who are offering courses within Scholé Academy are the experts in their classroom. They are autonomous. They are willing to consider your requests, but they do remain the primary instructor and the leader in that classroom. But the Learning Difference Center can come alongside a family and consider ways that we could support the students. So every student who comes to the Center for Students with Learning Differences begins with an initial consultation, just like in our traditional tutoring center. This is a chance for you to meet with the tutor whose schedule and interest matches your own. You have a chance to describe your needs, to compare goals, your goals, your students' goals, the requests of the student's classroom teacher, if that is a part of his life as well. And the special needs instructor is able to prepare her thoughts and to begin thinking about how she might be able to support the student. The next step in the learning difference plan is for you to meet with the special needs instructor after you have prepared an intake form for her to consider. After that, she can best advise you on whether an accommodation plan is needed or if she might be able to provide some support to you through some direct services. Our special needs instructors are able to talk directly to parents about ideas. They can work with students to support their learning, to offer supplemental tutoring and courses, as well as to possibly offer private course instruction in a few select departments with a mind for supporting that student in his own needs for learning. Our services within the Center for Students with Learning Differences are also offered per quarter. And again, we welcome parents' feedback and additional requests at every turn of the quarter so that what we're offering to your student really matches the current needs. I see that a few questions have come to the question and answer box, but I definitely welcome all attendees right now to think for a moment what questions we might be able to answer for you now. We could ask the panelists here. I can kind of open the floor for your questions as well. If I do not pass your question to a panelist, then I will respond to you via email, parents, about your particular question. I may find that your question is best passed directly to a certain person. So definitely leave those and I will pass those to the correct person tomorrow as well.
Charissa, I wonder if you could just briefly kind of give an idea of a timeline when a parent completes a tutoring center request. Kind of when could they expect to hear from you or a tutor? Maybe just flesh that out a little bit more. And then I think that's a good segue into some of those more specific questions.
Yes, definitely. So when a family submits the form to request a consultation, either in the tutoring center or in the Center for Students with Learning Differences, we're going to see that request the same day or the next business day. And we will begin to seek an instructor who is available and qualified. That process can take up to a week. We sometimes ask for up to 2 weeks if the request tends to be something a bit less common. But for requests such as mathematics, writing, Latin, etc., we should be able to put you in touch with a tutor within 5 business days. Now that tutor will need to set up a joint meeting time, and sometimes that takes a bit of extra time, just the finding of a time when both tutor and family are free. So I would expect, I would give that process a couple of weeks just to be matched with someone, to have a chance to speak with that person, and to move to the point of preparing a plan that both agree on. But we do our best to put you in touch with someone within those 5 business days. And if you have put in a request and you haven't heard from us, there's likely something wrong. So I would reach out. If it's been a week and you haven't heard anything, go ahead and send us another email at support@Scholé Academy. We do try to respond quickly. So don't hesitate to just maybe tap us on the shoulder and say, did you see my request? We hope to respond very quickly. We understand that needs often arise and need to be addressed in a timely fashion. So we want to be there for you that way. We have some questions about math, a question about specialized courses in math with a focus on particular elements. The answer is yes, you can certainly spell those needs out for us. You can describe for us the kind of course or focus that your student might be needing, and then I can pass those to a qualified and available instructor for his or her consideration. The tutor would be the one who can tell you some ideas about meeting those goals, who could describe the time that might be required, the frequency of meetings, etc. So the tutor is the one who will help to create a plan that the family then looks at and decides, does this meet our goals? Are we able to meet at these times, this frequency, etc. If your student is enrolled in a course or has perhaps paused their math studies or other studies in an odd place or something, yes, you can come to us with that information. You can share the book that your student was using, the place where they paused, and we can take that directly to the tutor, and that can be a part of that first meeting that you have with them. It's helpful if those things are spelled out in the request for consultation. That gives the tutor a chance to sort of wrap his mind around that request, to think about how he could go about meeting the need, and then he'll be very ready in that meeting to offer some ideas and to hear more about your goals and needs. As far as writing, we have a question about a writing course for a middle schooler beginning mid-year. The answer is, again, yes. You can come to us asking that question. It's helpful if you can spell out details about your student, your goals, the student's age, the student's experience, etc. I can take that to the tutor, and then she can begin to craft the plan to meet the goals that you have. She can often even advise what concepts and practice needs to be done if the goal is getting back on track for a corporate course in the fall of the next year. So all of those things could be discussed in that first meeting with your tutor. I have a question here about Greek. We do offer tutoring in both ancient Greek and in modern Greek. We do have tutors working with us who have experience with both. So yes, we could consider your request. I can pass that to the tutor, and he can begin to think about ways to meet your goals and the timing and frequency for that. So yes, thank you. Do I have other questions from guests tonight? Feel free to put those in the Q&A box. If you have a question for any of our panelists tonight, Joanne, or for me, you're welcome to ask those as well.
I just wanted to add, while you all are thinking about some questions for us, many times families who register for our classes know that we have our student parent handbook, but that is something also that's really important for any of our families that are seeking services with us, whether they're in a class or the Tutoring Center or the Center for Students with Learning Differences. And so I did just want to take a moment and point out a couple of those resources. So that first one that I mentioned is our Student Parent Handbook. And especially if you are new to our school, maybe you're just exploring the Tutoring Center tonight. Our resources, you'll see Student Parent Handbook, and several of our tutors, and certainly Charissa has touched on who we are as a school. But this opening section here about our Scholé learning philosophy, why we focus on restful learning or contemplative learning. And I think Vincent did a great job of talking about, and also Paul as well, this one-on-one, very personal, relational time that our tutors have really gives your student and our tutors the best opportunity to spend time on what is most important and dive deep, answer those why questions, and really just cultivate knowledge, yes, but also foster wonder and curiosity. And I love what Joelle said about, even touching some of our students who have anxiety or maybe even, negative past experiences and struggles. And so this restful learning is really about, for many of our students, rekindling joy in learning, and tutoring is a great place to have that happen. So if you haven't yet checked out our Student Parent Handbook, you'll see there our learning philosophy, as well as aspects of virtues, which certainly comes into play when we're working with any of our students. And then it just goes into more information about our community as a whole. Another resource that's really helpful if you are not yet receiving it is our newsletter sign up, and you can see that's under resources. And that's a good way. Every Monday we send out a newsletter, and it talks about what's going on in our community, including our tutoring center. So if you're not receiving our e-newsletter, you don't have to necessarily be committed to a tutor right now to get this newsletter, or in a class to get this newsletter. This is a newsletter to stay connected to our community. There are additional resources here. The things that Charissa has touched on tonight, the Tutoring Center, Learning Differences, all of that is here for you under academics. And then reaching out to our instructors about us, several emails and bios are there. So our website is really full of those supporting documents that speak to our mission and vision, and ways that you can get a hold of the panelists you see tonight and many others who are not here with us. And then just one other thing I was thinking about, tutoring as, Amanda checked out, but Amanda Reeves was here earlier and she was mentioning summer tutoring. It's been noted that you can purchase hours quarterly. So tutoring really lives outside of the academic year. It certainly goes on during the academic year, but for example, if you come and purchase hours that start in the spring, your program, as it's personalized for you, could carry on into the summer. And so maybe you're looking at, 3 quarters that aren't necessarily within a typical academic year. There's a lot of flexibility at our tutoring center. So Charissa, I'll pass it back to you because I do see some more questions here.
Yes. We have a question about private course instruction, and just kind of what to expect about that compared to corporate course instruction. So we do acknowledge that when a tutor is able to meet one-on-one with a student, he can really meet that student's need in particular. He can address his specific questions, etc. We do, however, want to affirm that there is a body of knowledge. As Joanne mentioned, there are also skills and executive function that grows over the course of a year in a student's life. We want to have all of those in mind for a corporate course as well, for a private course as well as corporate. So the timing of a private course will not likely be vastly different from a corporate course. We acknowledge it may be a bit more efficient. It may be a bit less time every week, but we do also recognize that there are certain marks that we would want the student to reach. And and that we would want to acknowledge also a parent's description of their need in terms of the time, number of hours, perhaps number of sources to be considered, et cetera. Those are decisions a homeschooling parent needs to make with a mind for their state's requirements. We hope that the parent will be able to bring that into the initial consultation, tell us a bit more about that so that we could describe the best course of action for meeting those goals as well as our own classical learning goals. That's a great question though. And as far as the flexibility that we like to highlight in the tutoring center, we might find that the plan at the beginning of the year changes a bit. So perhaps we set out meeting those 2 hours a week, just like a corporate course would. We might find that we need to increase or decrease that a bit in the next quarter, and we can do that. The way that we work with families in the tutoring center allows for such a change to be made. You can discuss that at the turn of each quarter with your tutor, and she will provide an updated proposal for you, and you can move forward. We ask that every tutor prepares her own set of policies to share with the family. These cover things such as absences, the time needed to reschedule, academic requirements, grading, etc. The tutor wants to share with you everything that would be important for you to know, the parent and the student, ahead of time so that we can work well together, so that there's peace in our relationship and that everyone is clear about how things will work in the year. We find that Scholé is not only brought into the equation when we consider beautiful things or when we have a mind for peace and rest, but also when we plan well. So planning well is very important to us in the tutoring center. We want to communicate well and often with parents. We want to make clear our own modus operandi. We want to hear your goals and needs, and we want to plan very carefully so that our time together is relaxed, it's meaningful, and it's productive as well. I am really glad that all of the parents have hung in there tonight with us, have stayed for our entire time. We are able to stay and chat if there are more questions for you to leave in the question box. Otherwise, I guests who have left a question there that I have not addressed out loud, I believe I've sent you an answer. If that's not in view, let me know. But I hope you find it kind of sitting there in the answer box on your screen. Great questions all. I appreciate those. Joanne, is there anything else you'd like to share as well as we kind of wrap up this evening snapshot of the tutoring center?
I was just thinking about that last question about the timing of pacing. I think it's also really important if there is a time constraint, if you will, that a family is working with, I think that's important as well to put in there. If the expectation is to study a certain concept or level within a semester or within a certain amount of weeks, that's going to be really important. Or if you're preparing for some other program that you already know has a start time, that's really important as well, because that gives our tutors the opportunity to say what's really realistic for them in terms of the way that they feel that they can meet your learning goals. And that goes back to what Charissa was saying, just about having expectations, right, that are clearly expressed from the beginning, and that gives the tutor the opportunity to say whether they can or cannot realistically meet the required goals within that time frame. And then pacing certainly does flex more in a tutoring one-on-one setting than it would ever do in a class, but still, when you're looking at instruction of something like art of argument or writing and rhetoric or a full year of Latin for children level A, those are things that a teacher really wants to make sure that they hear what your expectations are as the parent for the timing of being able to cover a class. So I just wanted to add that final bit of information there. But other than just to say thank you, parents, for being here tonight. And if you're watching this recording, we thank you for your time. And that support at scholeacademy.com is going to be your lifeline, if you will, in addition to filling out your request forms online. And again, I just want to stress that those initial meetings, whether you're meeting with a tutor in the tutoring center or a special needs instructor, those are free consultation times. So you purchase hours for the tutoring that you need, and then there is pricing there as well for your meetings with a special needs instructor after that initial consultation. So those early meetings are there really to see if we're a good partnership, if we're a good fit, and we certainly hope that we are. And so back to you, Charissa.
Yes. Well, I'm grateful to our panelists, to parents for coming, and to Joanne as well. I think if there are not any final questions, we'll say goodnight. We welcome you to email us at the support@scholeacademy.com email address. And I can even pass questions to the panelists you see here, as you have those as well. So good night. I hope you have a great evening and a blessed Advent season with your family, wherever you are.
Thank you. Have a good
Hey,
night.
everyone.